Hey everyone, good morning. Um, Saturday morning right now, a couple of days after the 2022 AP exam, and I had some time and thought I would, try to problem solve myself. As you can see on the left side, I have already planned out a lot of the stuff. I realized afterwards that maybe it would have been good to show you my step-by-step process where I take a first glance at the PDF and I show all my planning as I go through it. But maybe next year, because I already planned it out. But I'm going to break this video into two parts. The first part is going to be me showing my step-by-step planning and kind of explaining some of the thought process that went into the planning. As always, when approaching an FRQ, try to wait to code. Too many people try to get started with coding immediately, but if you can plan out a framework, then it's really easy to translate that framework into code. And the framework doesn't take as much time as the code. So you can, after you make the framework, you can kind of look over it, and be like, that doesn't quite make sense. And you can edit it a lot faster. All right, let's go ahead and kind of walk through my planning. And then maybe later this weekend, if I have some time, or next week, I'll go ahead and translate this framework into code. Question number one. So question number one, I jotted down that I have two classes. One of the classes is a level class. So I made a mental note of that. I wrote it down. And I have a game class. And I noticed that in this game class, I have three instance variables, and they're level 1, level 2, level 3. They're level objects. And I also noticed that I have to do two things. I have a ton of methods in here, but I noticed that I had to implement getScore and implement play many times. That's really what I noticed immediately, and that's what I jot down. So I go on, and it gives me a little bit more about what I have to do for getScore. Oh, whoops, sorry about that. So for getScore, I noticed that it returns the score for the most recently played game. So I write that down. It returns the score. And each game consists of 3 levels. And I notice up here that yes, each game consists of 3 levels. I do a kind of mental check to make sure I'm kind of understanding what it's telling me. And then it tells me a ton of stuff, really. It tells me some functions of the level class, and tells me specific scoring guidelines. So these are the functions of the level class that it tells me more of, and tells me the specific scoring guidelines that I have to consider when writing this getScore method. And it says level 1, I only get points if level 1 goal is reached. Level 2, only if level 1 and level 2 goal is reached. Level 3, if level 1, 2, 3, all 3 levels are reached. So I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking, okay, if I was to write this code out, how would I do it? And here's my immediate thought, naive solution. I have a variable called score, it's 0, and I check if the level 1 goal is reached. Well, how do I check if the goal is reached? Well, there's a goal reached method of the level class. Okay, so this is a little bit tricky. We've dealt with objects of different classes inside different classes, right? So this getScore method is inside the game class, and I have to use these level objects, and I have to use them to call these level class methods, or the methods in the level class. Okay, so I can use if level 1 dot goal reached. If that's true, then I add the points for the level 1 object. And I can do if 1 and 2, add 2 points. If 1, 2, and 3, add 3 points. And then if we look here, there's something about bonus. If the game is a bonus game, the score for the game is tripled. So after I add up all the points, it seems to me that I need to triple the points if it's a bonus game. And I can do that by just calling the isBonus method. Notice the isBonus method is in the same class, the game class, as the getScore method. So I can call it by its name. Yeah, so here it tells me some game score calculations. So now that I wrote all of that stuff down right there, on the left side, my naive solution, I can go ahead and work through the logic and test each test case according to my framework and see if it works. So if level 1, 2, and 3 are all true, so I should add up all 3. It is bonus, I times 3, and so forth. So according to my framework, according to my pseudocode right here, it seems like it returns the correct value. Same for the above. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. Now, if you look here, I also wrote a nested if. Because in my mind, it makes a lot of sense. Level 2 points are only earned if both level 1 and 2 goals are reached. What you could do is you could write an if level 1 goal reached, add 1 point. If level 1 and level 2 goal reached, add 2 points. If 1 and 2 and 3 goals are reached, add 3 points. But the only way you can add to the level 2 points is if level 1 is reached. So why don't we nest that if inside of the other if? It just makes for cleaner code and the logic flows a little bit better. Let's go to part B. So part B, we are writing the play many times method. And I wrote some notes down here. I'll go ahead and explain my thoughts. It simulates the play of NEM games. All right, so this, I'm going to play some number of games. And I see right here, it returns the highest score earned, the highest game score earned. So I notice that the method takes in an int. And when I see that I need to simulate the play of NEM games, some variable amount of games, that to me seems like a loop. While for doesn't really matter, but typically if I know how many times I want it to run, I want to use a for loop. Okay? It just makes more logical sense to me. So inside this for loop, I'm going to call this helper method play. Okay. Now I don't really know how play works, right? I don't really care about that. All I need to know is that it simulates the play of this game, and key thing, it updates all relevant game data. And so this is the game data, level 1, level 2, level 3, the instance variables. Okay. So this means my instance variable levels will be updated. I'm using the documentation. And let's go to that second paragraph. I made a note that reading the second paragraph gives more insight. Each call to get score will return the score earned in the single simulated play of the game. So, yes. So my plan, looking at my notes, is I'm going to have some type of loop, a for loop, and inside that loop, I'm going to call the play method, and that should update the levels. And after I've updated the levels, I will call get score, the one that I wrote previously. Okay, and get score takes in nothing and it returns an int. So that's going to be the score of the 3 levels. And I'll save that score in a variable. And then I compare that score with an old high score, and if higher, replace. So before my for loop, I should probably initialize a variable, maybe give it a score, call it high score, give it a value of 0. Inside, when I call get score, I'll probably save that to a variable called current score. And if current score is greater than high score, then I replace high score with the current score. And then once I'm done simulating all those runs of the game, I will go ahead and return the high score variable because it should have that. All right, that was my planning for question number 1. Let's go on to question 2. Now, I'm not saying that on the AP exam you should go plan question 1, 2, 3, 4. You should definitely plan question 1 and then write question 1 when it's fresh in your mind. As you can see, I'm kind of trying to remember what I did just even an hour ago. But yeah, I already have it all planned, so I'm just making this video showing my planning and really trying to hammer down the importance of, hey, don't code first, plan first. It makes things a lot easier. All right, question number 2. So question number 2, I have a book class, and there it is. And then I have a textbook class, and it's a subclass of book. All right, so immediately, subclass, I think of the keyword extends. Okay. Now this textbook has an addition number, which is a positive integer. So that's going to tell me private. Remember, APCSA, they want all your instance variables to be private. So private, just do it by default. And it's integer, so int addition. Okay. And then I have a get book info method, which when called on a textbook, returns a string that also includes the addition information as shown in the example later on. So I just write return string. And I also noticed that this book class has a get book info as well. So if you remember inheritance, we are overriding that method. And then I have another method called can substitute for, which returns true. So that's a Boolean, all right? Returns Boolean. If a textbook is a valid substitute for another textbook and false otherwise, it's valid if something, okay. So it seems like it takes in a textbook object, okay? All right, so true if two textbook objects have the same title and addition of the current textbook is greater or equal to the addition of the parameter textbook. All right, so I'm already trying to make my method headers right here. Okay, so if I look here, let's look at the sample code that they give us. All right, samples. So I see right here, very first thing, they give me a textbook constructor right here. So inside my textbook class, I know I need to write this constructor that takes in a string, a double, and an integer. Okay. And inside this constructor, because it's a subclass of the book class, right, I need to call my parent, my super call. Because if I remember, the only instance variable of textbook is addition number. So that would be the 2, right? It tells me addition of 2. So to assign these variables, the string, the title, biology, and the double price of 49.75, I need to have a super call to my parent constructor right there. So I'll have that super call, okay? Next, I noticed the get book info. Right here, get book info. I notice that returns a string, like I said up there. And the string is the title first, followed by a dash, followed by a price, followed by a dash, followed by addition. So how do I get that title and that price? Well, I need to call the super, okay? So if I am in the child class, the textbook get book info, I can do super and call this get book info. That'll give me the title dash price. And then I need to add on to that a dash and then my addition number. So tag on addition number afterwards. And then I look at can substitute for. So keep note of this versus parameter. If I look at the can substitute for method, I see that I'm calling it on a textbook object. See, Bio 2019 right here is a textbook object. Okay. And I pass into that method a textbook object. Okay. So, and it returns a Boolean. So that would be public Boolean can substitute for, and a parameter would be textbook and some random variable name. Okay. All right. So knowing all that, this is what I have to write. I also have to write a get addition method as well, but that one's pretty easy to write. Okay. I think the hardest part would be the can substitute for, and here's my outline. I'm just going to write this immediately because I know this is what I need to write. Public class textbook extends book. All right, that's my planning for that one. Okay, let's go on to question 3. So question 3, we are writing a review class, or we have a review class. Inside that review class, we have a rating and comment, an int and a string. And then later on, I have a review analysis class, and inside this review analysis class, I have a instance variable called all reviews that is a review array. So this array is going to have a ton of review objects. Okay. And then I noticed that I need to implement get average rating and this collect comments method. I make a mental note that I need to return double, and I need to return an array list of strings. So we have an array of reviews, and I need to return an array list of strings. Just making a mental note of that. All right, let's go to part A. So part A, it's a typical, something typical that you do with arrays is you loop through it, right? So we need to write the review analysis method get average rating, which returns the average rating, and they define what they mean by average, the arithmetic mean of all elements of all reviews. So that is my array, if you remember right here, right? That's my array of review objects. So immediately I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna go through all my review objects inside of all reviews. So I'm gonna loop through the entire thing. For loop, for each loop, those make the most sense to me. And I need to grab the rating for each review. Okay. And I need to add to some sum. And to grab the rating for each review, notice that this is private, right? So I'm going to call the get rating method on the review object, and that should return an integer. Now, if you've done programming, you might realize that, hey, this returns an int, and an int divided by an int, if an int and an int have a kid, the kid is an int, right? So int divided by int is an int. I need to return a double. And we've encountered this so many times in class. So that's why I make a mental note that when I create the sum variable, I want to make that a double. So that when I do double divided by an int, then the kid is an int, okay? Or sorry, the kid is a double. So that allows me to have a double. So I will do sum divided by the array length, double divided by int will give me a double, and I return that value. Okay, let's go on. Pretty easy. Part B. Oh, look at all these notes. This one is the harder one. So I need to write the method collect comments, which collects and formats only comments that contain an exclamation point. All right, so I need to somehow check if there's an exclamation point inside the comment. Okay, inside this comment. So I need to grab the comment first, and then once I have the comment, I need to check if there's an exclamation point in there. So typically we use the index of method, right? And if the index of method, oh, let me write that. There we go. If the index of method does not equal -1, then that means that thing you're looking for is inside. You can also use .contains, but contains is not really on the AP subset, but that contains returns a Boolean. Either one is fine. Okay, and then we obtain copies. An empty array list is returned if no comment has an exclamation point. And it tells me all this specific criteria. All right, so big picture, I'm thinking that I need to loop through all reviews. And when I loop through all reviews, I need to check if there's a exclamation inside of the string. Maybe I should write that down. Inside of a comment. I was writing this on a tablet, that's why it's so different. But anyways, so I loop through all reviews, I grab the comment, and I check if there's an exclamation mark inside of comment. If there is, then I'm going to go ahead and create a new string with the specified formatting. And then I notice that the formatting says, see, it's going to begin with the index of the review in all reviews. So then I notice that, okay, this is index 0, and the new string has index 0. and then I have a dash. So index dash, and then I have a copy of the original comment. So index dash and then original comment. And then I noticed that there's one more specification. The string must end with either a period or an exclamation point. If the original comment does not end in either a period or an exclamation point, a period is added. So I was thinking, okay, well, you could use .index of. That tells you if it has an exclamation point, right? But it doesn't tell you if it ends with an exclamation point. So how could you find out if it ends with an exclamation point? Well, you can use substring, and you can grab the last character using substring, something to do with the length, -1 probably. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure, but I know I can use substring to grab the last, to see if it ends with an exclamation point or period. Okay, so these are just really broad notes I'm writing to myself, and I'm confident that this would work. You can also use try, but substring is on the subset of AP. And once I have this new string that I create, I will add it to the array list. All right, that is my planning for that question. And it's pretty easy to translate this into the code. And after I translate it to code, I would run through my code, make sure that it works with the test cases provided by AP College Board. Question number 4. All right, I have a 2D array of integers, randomly generated data. And I see that I need to write 2 methods. So I have int max and values not shown. Probably they don't want you to hard code it or something. And they have a grid 2D array. And I need to do populate and count increasing columns. All right, so populate. So populate method assigns a newly generated random value to each element of grid. Okay, so this is a classic traverse a 2D array. This part isn't hard, right? Outer loop, for loop, inner for loop, and then we need to do something inside of for loops. So that part's not hard. The hard part is, I think, this generating a random value. The AP subset uses math.random, so I make a note to do math.random. And there are 3 criteria. When you generate a random value, a valid value must have an equal. This is what is a valid value if it meets all the following criteria, and the values must have an equal chance of being generated. So a valid value needs to be between 1 and max inclusive. So to do that, I do math.random, and math.random, if you forgot, gets me a double between 0 inclusive and 1 exclusive. And to get to 1 and 100, well, you have to remember some of these tricks, right? So if you multiply by 100, 0 times 100 is 0, 1 times 100 is 100. If I cast that into an int, that gives me integers between 0 and 99, right? Because I don't include 100, it's 99.999. And that casts into the int, you truncate, you cut off everything to the right decimal, it's 99. And then if you add 1 to that, that'll get you 1 to 100 inclusive. But then you also have to check if it's divisible by 10. Okay? So how do you check if something is evenly divisible by another number? Well, you mod it, right? And if the number mod by 10 is not 0, then you have to calculate it again. And right here, I make a note, maybe a while loop. Okay? And then I also have to check if the value is not divisible by 100. But I'm thinking to myself, well, is it the only number between 1 and max? Oh, I just found an error, right? For some reason, I thought max was 100. Why did I think that? Why did I put times 100? Let's correct that. Right? Let's correct that right here. That should be max. Okay. Yeah, what? I don't know what I was thinking an hour ago. Here we go. Okay. So let me just erase all this. Max. And then cast it. That'd be max minus 1. And this would get me max because I add 1. See, even teachers make mistakes sometimes, but managed to catch it before this went live. Excellent. All right. So then I guess my earlier concern doesn't matter, right? So I'll mod by 100 to check if it's evenly divisible by 100. All right. So go through grid with a nested for loop. So I probably have these two things in an if condition. If the randomly generated number is divisible by 10, sorry, not divisible by 10, or divisible by 100, something along those lines, then I have to recalculate it. Again, I'm not trying to think too specifically. I'm just trying to write big picture when I do this planning. And then I'll probably tinker with it after I code it. Or I'll probably go through some examples and see if it fits my code after I have a naive solution down. All right, let's go to part B. So this one was a little bit more tricky. The reason why is that this count increasing columns method returns the number of columns in grid that are in increasing order. A column is considered to be in increasing order if the element in each row after the first row is greater than or equal to the element in the previous row. A column with only one row is considered to be increasing order. So this is a little bit tricky because for APCSA, typically we teach row major order. And that's where you go by the row. So we go this number, then this element, then this element, then this element. But for this one, you really want to go top down. You want to check if this compared with that, and then this compared with that. So this requires us to rethink our usual nested for loops. So my outer loop is going to be dealing with columns now. And my inner loop is going to be dealing with rows. Okay, and I made those two notations. And I need to check if the next row value is greater or equal to the current row value, right? It's increasing if the element in each row after is greater than or equal to the element in the previous row. So I was trying to figure out, like, okay, how exactly would I do this? I think I put a less than sign, and I was like, okay, I'll just exit out this for loop if it's not true, and I return true or false. But it doesn't want us to return true or false. This method wants us to count the number of columns where it wants us to count the number of columns that follows this pattern of each row being greater than or equal to the previous row. Wow, you really find out if you understand something if you have to explain to someone else, like right now. So I thought about, okay, what if I have a variable out here, counter? This counter is going to be the number of increasing columns. And then here, inside my column for loop, but outside my row for loop, I'm going to have a variable that has essentially how many increasing rows in this column. That's what this variable is going to be representing. And then if the next row is greater or equal to the current row, then I increase this variable. So once I'm done with the inner for loop, I'd compare that variable with the amount of rows in this thing. And then if they're equal, then I should increment this column counter out here. And after the for loops, I'd return that column counter. Now, just looking at this very naive solution, I am realizing that if I initialize compare count to 0, right? Typically we initialize things to 0. Then I would have 1 less, because if I do this row compare with this row, then I increment it by 1. And then if I do this row by this row, I increment it by 1, so this would be 2 now. And I want to stop there because there's no row after that. So I need to be careful of out of bounds errors, and that would be dealing with the inner row for loop. So instead of initializing this to 0, I wonder if I initialize to 1. Yeah, and then if I compare count to num rows, I also notice that there's this thing right here. A column with only 1 row is considered to be in increasing order. So that's a edge case, test case that you have to consider. If this is 1 and it doesn't go inside my for loop at all because there's nothing to compare, then this would still be true. I can increment column counter. Anyways, getting a little late. Got some Mother's Day weekend plans. So hopefully this video was helpful. Hopefully you can see my logic, my planning. And again, I don't recommend you go through all the questions and plan out everything. Plan out question 1, try coding question 1, and then compare your code with the examples they give you to see if your code works for the examples they give you, right? But anyways, until next time, right? Say hello to your mom, have a good Mother's Day weekend, and stay tuned for the next video where I translate this planning into the code, and we'll see if it actually works. Okay?